Hi everyone, I'm Mia Carmo and you're watching Breathe TV, a safe space to come to exhale and to feel connected throughout your breast cancer journey. I always share that when I first got diagnosed, I really didn't have anywhere to go, and so my goal is to give other women and men and children, anyone touched by this disease, a place to come to just be who they are, be in a space of healing, transformation, community, and again, being able to exhale as they navigate breast cancer. So please meet my amazing guest today, Michelle Anderson Benjamin. She is a wife, a mother from New York City. Michelle is a triple negative breast cancer, metastatic breast cancer warrior. She began the Fearless Warrior Project, and she's really creating a lot of change around mental health and helping people to understand the importance of acceptance. Without further ado, Michelle, welcome to Breathe TV.
Thank you, it's an honor.
Oh my God, it's an honor being with you. And I'm missing my friend Austin, by the way. He's like everything.
Shout out to Austin.
I was saying Austin's like, it's like Beyonce and Blue Ivy. Okay, that's how they are, right?
Yes.
So before we start the show, I always want to get people in a space of alignment with where we are, because we do want you to breathe. So if you're driving a car, don't do what I'm gonna do right now. Don't do it like this. Just sit there. If you're home, you can place your hand on your heart and on your belly. And take a deep breath. And one more. And just repeat after me. I'm gonna say 5 short affirmations. I am comforted.
I am comforted.
I am surrounded by compassion.
I'm surrounded by compassion.
I am filled with peace.
I am filled with peace.
I'm surrounded by light and love.
I'm surrounded by light and love.
I am divinely guided.
I'm divinely guided.
I am home.
I am home.
And so it is. Tell me how you first got diagnosed, what that was like, and then going from that into the project of becoming more of an advocate.
So I was diagnosed in 2020 at the age of 36, no family history of breast cancer, no lumps. I woke up one morning and just had bloody leakage from my right breast. I'm working in healthcare, I know that wasn't normal. And I went to my GYN doctor to see, if it was a reaction from my IUD, and it wasn't, and it wouldn't stop. So I went to urgent care and they did an ultrasound and they recommended that I get a mammogram done. So I was able to get in right away at my hospital and be seen within a week and a half. I had 5 biopsies, an MRI of both breasts.
5 biopsies?
Yes, because they did a biopsy of my right breast, my left breast. They also did biopsies of my lymph nodes on both sides. And then they wanted to do a core biopsy, which is when you're under an MRI machine, and they can do like a fine needle biopsy. So they wanted to make sure that they captured as much as they could to figure out what was happening. Within a week and a half, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, but they didn't know to the extent. And because of the fact that my breast was leaking blood and it wouldn't stop, the first option of us to go was my mastectomy of the removal of my right breast. Because of my age and being 36, genetic testing was part of that conversation. So when I was told I was diagnosed on September 21st, 2020, I had genetic counseling literally in the next room waiting for me. Just because they wanted to figure out what type of subtype I was, did I have any mutations, did I carry any genes? And, my doctors were very in tune to my care. A lot of questions that I had, they were ready to answer, and a lot of things that I didn't know, they were ready to give that conversation. And then also part of it, I don't know if it was because I work in healthcare, so they were already like, okay, she's gonna come in here with asking these questions, let's be prepared. So I had my right breast removed, and I had tissue expanders put in, had difficulties with that. Had to have emergency surgeries to get tissue expander removed, put back in. That delayed treatment for 3 months. At first it wasn't a trigger for anything or a concern because margins were cleared from the mastectomy. So I started ACT, and because of my age, they wanted to do a dose-dense regimen, which meant I went to treatment every other week. So I did that, went through the trouble with that, and even with treatment, you lose your hair, they prepare you for these things. But what I noticed is that going through treatment, going to my appointments, I didn't see anybody really that looked like me. No one in my age range. You know, I was the youngest person in the room, African-American woman. You know, my doctor prepared me for my hair falling out, but they didn't tell me, you know, alternatives. And, you know, they gave me a prescription for a wig, but they gave me, where was I going to get a wig that represented me? And so I felt the need that instead of complaining about those things, to be a change. And that was how the Fearless Warrior Project was created, along with the fact that as a mom, you know, I had my daughter at the time was 3, and I wanted to be, in order for her to see fearlessness, she has to see it in me first. I'm a firm believer that you have to show your kids what you expect of them. You can't always tell them what you expect. You have to be an example of what you expect.
You have to embody it.
Yep.
So you're in treatment, you create the Fearless Warrior Project. Tell me how the Fearless Warrior Project helps people navigate their cancer journey, and what kind of programs you have.
So Fearless Warrior Project, it empowers women and men to find the fearless warrior within themselves. Oftentimes we get to a place where like obstacles happen in life and we get stuck in it. And for me, I was groomed as a child my dad has been my warrior my entire life, but he instilled these tools in me that don't get stuck in things that you can't change. The only thing you can control is your reaction. So he would have sayings like, you know, people complain about the milk being spilled on the floor, but they don't realize that it still got to get picked up. You know, if you're going through something, you got 5 minutes to go cry it out, and then you need to come out with a resolution on how to fix it. So that's always been my mindset for anything that I've ever had to endure in life, is to always not allow myself to get stuck in it. And just having the daughter and the son that I have, that, you know, my kids and I are very in tune with each other. Even with me being diagnosed, you know, I had the conversation with my son one-on-one before I really had a conversation with anyone in my family. Because at the end of the day, kids know. You can try as hard as much as you want. They feel you. Your kids feel the energy in the room. And I would rather them hear it from their mom and get the bits and pieces of what's gonna happen next than hear it from Google and hear it from someone else. So how the image and the whole background, my daughter was playing in the house one day dressed up, and I was recovering from treatments on a sofa, and she came to me and she was like, "Mommy, I'm a superhero." And she had this blanket around her neck, and she had her PJ Maxx thing on, and she was just standing there with her Superwoman pose, and she was just making different poses, and I was taking pictures of her. And I just looked at this picture and I was like, look at this young girl. No matter what's happening in her life, right? She's not letting that scare her. She has this fearless mindset. And my logo is literally a cartoon image of that picture. And it reminds me every single day that I have to tap into that fearless, whether it's me breaking down and restoring myself, or me encouraging myself, or me having a positive mindset to go to treatment every 3 weeks. You know, when you're metastatic, you're in treatment for almost the rest of your life. So it's a constant roller coaster of reminding yourself, building yourself up, saying, you got this, queen, you could do this, you can push yourself. And that takes a lot. Having those little pockets of encouragement in your life that constantly pour into you is part of the process of being fearless, because they show me that, mommy, yes, we know, we see what you're going through. But you're showing us that life, even though when life knocks you down, you don't stay down. You get back up and you keep on fighting. And those are tools that you want your kids to have, because in all essence, in your absence, you want to make sure that your kids are okay. Yeah. If you're not around to protect them. So instilling that in them, even at a young age, is giving them the tools that this is what, you know, life is not perfect. You're gonna have obstacles in life. How are you gonna react to those obstacles? Another thing that I instill in my kids is that it's you two against the world. So their bond together, my son takes care of his sister takes care of him. I know, God forbid, if I transition, they got each other. Yeah. And for a mom, that's all I can ask for.
How did you tell them about your, like, you know, it's one thing to say like you're going through treatment, but knowing that you're metastatic, how did you explain to because Offset's what?
She's 6.
She's 6 now.
So I went through stage 1, went through remission, and then unfortunately in 2022, October, it came back. And it was different. This time around, the conversation was different because they were starting to get their mom back. Like, mama was in remission. You know, I had no evidence of disease. I was starting to regain back my hair. My hair started growing back. I started having more energy. I started being more present. And this time around, it was like, okay, Michelle, you can't just go the same route you went the last time. So before I even had a conversation with my children, I had a conversation with everyone that's around them. I went to both of their schools and had a meeting with the guidance counselor, their teachers, and the principal. I let them know what was going on in my household and that, you know, when I have this conversation with my kids, they might not be okay. And oftentimes kids don't show you that they're not okay, but they'll go to school and act it out. So if this is what's happening, this is why.
Yeah.
And how are we going to build a foundation of support for them? So I had that meeting with my daughter's school, and she was in kindergarten, and I had that meeting with my son's school. He's in high school, and everybody was on the same page. I had a conversation with their pediatrician. We had therapists on deck, you know, because they need that support. I had a conversation with my village of family and friends. I need you guys to step in.
That's really awesome. So was it, we discussed a lot, and I hope you don't mind me asking. If you do mind me asking, let me know. We can shift the conversation. But, you know, cancer affects you, the individual. It affects your kids. It affects their community. You mentioned the principal, the pediatrician. You mentioned your friends and family, your village. But it affects marriages too.
Yes.
So mine also, my relationship dissolved during my treatment. I just wasn't, it was too much, right? And so having to deal with that while going through cancer is also a challenge. People are watching, I'm sure, who are going through this right now, who, like, I'll say for me, I was devastated. I cried. I can't do this right now. I can think about cancer. It's in most ways it's painful.
Yeah.
Because you're being the better person for your kids, but while dealing with your own emotions. So would you be able to share, if you're comfortable, how did you do that?
One thing cancer has been for me is my battery in my back. It forced me to walk in my purpose. It forced me to be the Michelle that I've always been, to light the fire of all the capabilities and all the desires that I've always wanted to explore in my life. So even with going through challenges, life challenges as a marriage or dissolvement of a marriage, or just, you know, things happening that can be very hurtful, it reminds me that, Michelle, you have a purpose on this earth, right? And sometimes everybody's not meant to be on that journey with you. And yes, it might hurt and you might feel some type of way, but it's your journey, not theirs.
You decide how you live your life.
You decide how you have to, and you don't stop your journey because someone else needs to get off.
Yep.
Sometimes you have to shed to grow.
The train stops, they get off, you keep going.
In life, you have to shed to grow. And shedding can be hard, you know, especially if you're accustomed to certain things and you've been living a certain way. But I'm also a spiritual person. Things show up in your life at the time they need to show up, and things drop off of your life at the time they need to. So even in the moment where you might feel hurt and you might feel betrayed and you might feel like, why? You have to also look at it and say, well, maybe they weren't meant to be in this part of your chapter, because them being in this part of your chapter might be holding you back.
Can we just pause there and just embrace that moment in time? Because it was so powerful. Because people, like for me, of course it hurt. Sometimes people don't realize what's inside of them. And there's a quote I say a lot, like, when people are squeezed, what comes out is what's in them. Like when you squeeze orange juice. So whenever that person is squeezed and they're going through pressure, what comes out is what's inside. That's their juice. What comes out of you is what's inside of you, and that's who you really are.
Yep.
Cancer doesn't change people.
No, it doesn't.
It's whoever you become, just because of what happened to you, is who you were. You were always Michelle, who was fearless, who was all this, but somehow that lit a fire under you to push you into your legacy, living legacy now, not in 10, 15, 20 years or never. Were you coaching and doing this before getting diagnosed, or kind of did it move you into?
So honestly, my advocacy of coaching has always been instilled in me my entire life. My son is 16, and he has a learning advantage. I don't call it a learning disability.
Can you say that again, please? A learning advantage?
A learning advantage. I say that learning advantage because I'm a firm believer that everyone learns differently. Doesn't mean that they have challenges. Doesn't mean they're not normal. Everybody learns differently. So my son has a learning advantage. And he is extremely smart, exceptionally smart, but he doesn't learn the traditional way that's taught in schools. So from the very beginning, for him being very young, I've always had to be his advocate in the school system, because the challenge is they want you to learn a certain way, they want you to be a certain way, and that's not my son. That doesn't mean that he can't achieve the same goal as everyone else. He's always been top of his class academically, but he does things his way. So it's not that he has to change who he is to adapt for you. You have to change who he is, who you are, and how you view him to adapt for him.
you're changing the labeling people are giving your son.
Yes.
Labeling is something that I really am very aware of too. You teach your kids how to label their life experience as well, you know? So it's so important that as you go through things in your life, telling your kids what you want to tell them, you tell them all you want to say, and yourself, but it's what you embody and how your energy moves in the space that shifts people and yourself.
And even having a young Black man in a society, he has so many triggers and targets on his back that you know, we as individuals,
so many bags. Yeah,
so many bags that he didn't ask for, right? And the one thing that I always tell my children, be who you are, make whatever that is to make you happy. As your mom, I'm always going to support you. I'm always going to go to bat for you. You know, my kids tell me used to tell the teachers at their school, like, my mom is crazy. You know, if anybody if somebody messes with me in this school, my mom going to shut this whole school down. But they knew that if they were in trouble, that someone was running to them and going to rescue them. I instill that. I want them to be the best them. There's so many of us living in this life, not being who we are and being a representative because we're trying to be what everybody else wants us to be.
If someone's watching this right now and they're TNBC patient, at any stage, how would you explain to them how to understand and navigate? Because it's a lot of fear at first.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So one of the things I always encourage people to do is have your questions prepared. Even if you're too scared to have that conversation with your doctors in person, you know, a lot of doctors have portals. Email them your questions. Do your research and not necessarily Google. You know, you have reliable research like even Tigerlily. You can go on, find out about triple negative. You can read about the different subtypes. You know, ask questions about your pathology report because at the end of the day, we know about our cancer, our stage, and our subtype. But there's other subtypes that we need to have a conversation about. You know, there's different mutations that make up your tumor. Highlight those things and just ask your doctor, what is ATM? What is P53? What do these words mean? And what role do they play in my journey? How do they affect the type of treatment that I'm gonna get? How do they affect the way you clinically diagnose me and you create a treatment plan for me? You know, don't be afraid to ask those questions. Don't think that you're doing the most because it's your life. So
well, you have to be
but I'm saying some people feel that by them asking a bunch of questions, they're doing too much. It's your life. I was that patient that when I came to my appointments, I came prepared for the worst. I came prepared for the best, but I had my binder ready. Like even when I got my plastic surgery, you just not gonna give me who you wanna give me. These are my prospects that I picked. We gonna go through the pros and cons of each. You tell me who you would suggest for your wife and your mother, and then we gonna decide who's the best for Michelle. And I still have to interview that person as well. And one of the questions I'm gonna ask, how many African American women have you done surgery on? Do you have results or data that shows me how their body looks after you had surgery? Because I know my scars are not gonna look like a Caucasian woman's scars. So like what
in your treatment?
In my treatment,
because cancer can mutate while you're in treatment.
Yeah, like that's not going to be my reflection and how my journey looks. It doesn't look like everyone else. Everybody's journey is different. Yeah. So those are the conversations that you should have. And like I tell people, it doesn't have to be vocal. It can be through text. It can be through email. You can even bring a sheet of paper and on the way out your appointment, be like, these are some questions that I have. I know I have an appointment with you in 3 weeks. Can you have them ready for me when I come back? You know, it's just, you know, everyone's advocacy style is different. Yeah. But you have to be your #1 advocate. Or have a homegirl or somebody that you're close to. Have them come with you. Have them on FaceTime. If you got that one homegirl that's the vocal person of the group that's going to always speak up for everybody, have her on FaceTime and she can ask those questions for you. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, it's your life.
But having a team where you don't have to do the most. Mm-hmm. You know, like we have to do so much in our lives as people who are younger and of color, Black women. Mm-hmm. I don't want to have to fight for my life with a doctor that is fighting back at me. Yep. So I literally have to fire, before I got the right doctor, 3 doctors. Because I'm like, I'm paying you to help me keep myself alive. If you have to fight me on that, then you're not on my team. Yep. Because at the end of the day, who you pick on your team could help you live longer or hinder your life. Yep. And I can't have that because this is my cancer. When you have TNBC, it's very aggressive. Yes, it mutates, it changes, and you're trying to find more treatment options, but Again, you know, that team has to be able to be ahead of any research, science, clinical trial, because often patients don't know, they're busy. Get a team that loves you, that respects you, and that's going to go to bat for you. But you mentioned being a clinical trial. Did you have to ask for one, or did they offer you one?
So when I was metastatic, it was a shock to both myself and also to my doctor, because I was doing so well. I did so well with treatment, you know, and he was he was just devastated as well. And honestly, he had already started genomic testing and doing blood biopsies in the process of me still going through the testing phase. He's one of the things I love about my oncologist is that he goes above and beyond. So he's the doctor that's going to do the worst, do the top test first, and then work himself down. You know, some people say, let's do an x-ray, then a CAT scan, then an MRI, then a PET scan. No, we're going to do a PET scan. Then we'll work ourselves down. So he had already started genomic testing. He already did blood biopsies. He was running everything. And unfortunately, I'm PD-L1 negative. So I don't qualify for a lot of immunotherapy drugs. And I was doing my own research. He was doing his own research. He had, you know, at the hospital that I'm at, they were looking at the clinical trials they already currently had. And a lot of them I didn't qualify for. Even some that were closed, they were going to reopen them just for my case. And but I didn't qualify because I was PD-L1 negative, and a lot of them you have to be PD-L1 positive. I didn't have any, I'm not HER2, I'm not, you know, estrogen positive. So he kept running tests to see if, even if he got a 1% of HER2 or 1% of estrogen, he was like, I would force them, you know, I would push for them to allow you onto this drug. And then he found a clinical trial that I'm currently on, which is phase 3. And he was able to, unfortunately, it wasn't in any hospital in New York. It was only 4 hospitals in the country. And it was being used at a time for HER2 low patients that were metastatic. And it wasn't a first line, it didn't require a second line of defense. So what that means is that some clinical trials, you have to be on a drug, it doesn't work, and then you qualify for the drug. This one, it didn't have that restriction. So, you know, we had a conversation about it. He was like, you know, it's only currently at MD Anderson. And I was like, wow, I'll go to MD Anderson. Like, you know, and he's like, wait a minute, you know, time out. Cause I was like, all right, we'll fly to MD Anderson. And he's like, I'm trying to get it here. Give me 3 weeks. And normally it takes 6 to 8 weeks for a clinical trial to be approved by the board, for them to get paperwork in, for them to process everything. Cause they first have to get it approved. And us taking 3 weeks was taking a chance, because in the time that you're waiting, your cancer is progressing. Yeah. And my cancer did start to progress. My tumors, even though they were extremely small, they started to grow. In the meantime, and he kept on saying, like, you know, we were both taking a chance, right? And he's like, I don't want to start you on something and then this goes through. Just give me 3 weeks. So he fought tooth and nail, to get it approved. I did all the requirements that I had to do for pre-testing, and that's one of the other challenges of clinical trials. The prerequisites to get into the trial, to even sign the paperwork for the trial, the testing that requires you can be discouraging, because you have to do a bone scan, a body scan, this, that, everything, and you have to get it done within a certain period of time.
I really want to dig into that, because people are afraid of trials. They're terrified of trials. There's things that happened in the past with trials. To your point, documentation, the scans, the waiting, the travel, if you can't leave your job. I mean, there's all these things they're barriers. So what are the benefits of being in a trial, though?
So one of the benefits of being in a trial is that you do get above standard of care. And what I mean by above standard of care, once you are in the trial, and let me just be clear, some trials, they are, even if you don't get the trial drug, you might get the standard of care, but you're still in the trial. So what that means is that you're monitored more. So normally you might get scans every 6 to 8 weeks. I have CAT scans every 6 weeks, like clockwork. You know, they do extensive testing just because. If you do blood work, they do blood work on you for your standard blood work, and then they do blood work for the research part of it. It's like having, and then certain trials, there are other benefits where you get a concierge service to treatment, to home. They help you with meal plans. They help you in any type of way possible to help accommodate, you know, make you comfortable that you're in the trial. Because even though a trial is not FDA approved, it's like, I always tell people, it's like jumping out of the plane without a parachute. You don't know if it's going to work or if it is.
But if the plane's on fire,
yeah. So you're taking a chance, but at the end of the day, is your life worth taking a chance? Because you don't know, right?
But also, every medication we have now has been at some point
a trial. Yes, like even
headache,
your,
allergy medication.
The lipstick you put on your lips has been through a trial. So, having that understanding and then saying, my life is worth me jumping out of the plane and taking a chance. At the end of the day, I know that death is part of my life, because at the end of the day, death is part of everyone's life. I do a lot of sound healing. I do a lot of meditation. And part of that is to be in tune with Michelle. We get so pulled in so many other directions, being someone for someone else, whether it's a mom, whether it's a job, whether it's a marriage, whether it's, family members. We get pulled in so many directions, and we have to be someone for someone else all the time. When we finally get to that space where we show up for ourselves, the power and the impact that it brings into our soul is to a point where it can't be changed. No one can ever alter it. No one can ever pull you off track. When you finally see your purpose of who you were meant to be, what your assignment is, what God has put you on this earth to be, you don't want to miss that mark once you open your eyes and see, this is what I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to do. And unfortunately for me, I tell people all the time, cancer brought me to that place. Because I had to say to myself, if I'm dying, what do I want my story to be?
What do I want it for?
What did I do on this earth with the time that I had left? And, in the very beginning, it was about creating a legacy and building a foundation for my children and my family and being an advocate for so many others, right? And then now I'm metastatic. And God is telling me again, sis, you're really not tapping into the full potential of you. You're not really tapping into what I need you to do while you're here.
Getting chills while you're talking.
And now it's like, you don't got time to be hesitant on your movement. If you feel the nerve and you feel that impulse, you jump on it, because that is what you're here to do. And that is why I don't allow negative things to alter that mindset. Doesn't mean it doesn't become challenging. Doesn't mean that I don't have to be redirected. But then that's when you start to see who your people are, because your people will get you together real quick.
Yeah.
And those are the people that matter. And that's where shedding is a process that never ends. Because the same people that can start with you when you were in the very beginning of treatment is not going to necessarily be the same people that's going to be with you at remission. Not going to be the same people that you're going to be at recurrence. Life changed for me, ultimately, when the word curable was taken out of the conversation, and quality of life is now part of my sentences when I talk with my medical team. When a person tells you that our goal is to maintain your quality of life, you have to now think about, what is my quality of life?
How do you have that feels for your mindset, and that mindset of, just this is my life. I have these moments, and, I have to really be intentional about living them.
So I prioritize what is important, and prioritizing what is important means my children, myself. I make sure that my children, myself are always top of mind when I wake up, throughout the day, when I go to sleep. My advocacy and my business, that's part of my journey. I don't overwhelm myself with it. I give it its slot, its days, its times. And I also make sure that I am very intentional with my self-care. So I have my bi-weekly massages. I do my sound healing every month. I do my meditations. I work out 2 to 3 times a week. That's non-negotiable. So kids got to figure out what they're going to eat. Childcare just got to happen. But when that time is scheduled, it's non-negotiable. I'm not canceling what needs to happen for Michelle unless it's necessary. And being selfish for self-care is not a bad thing. Saying no to people because you have to take care of you first is not a bad thing. And being unapologetic, it's not a bad thing, because I have to be in the right mind for Michelle so that Michelle can be in the right mind for Offset and Harold. And then everything else comes after. But also I have my daily conversations with God. I talk to God every single day, because it become overwhelming. And sometimes you have those days where you're like, I can't do it. Why am I fighting so hard if my overall outcome is gonna be that I'm gonna die? Why am I fighting so hard if I have, you know, yes, it can be, I can get to a phase where this treatment is working today, and then a month later my tumor starts growing back. And I constantly am reminded, because you have an assignment to do, love. That's why you're fighting hard. And you know, one of the things, I lost my dad while fighting cancer. My dad was my guy. But my dad instilled so much in me to be a powerful woman, to be a self-taught woman, a self-educated woman. And education doesn't necessarily have to be book smart. You know, I have a master's degree, but you know, street smart as well, and knowing the difference between nonsense and knowing how to pick out BS, you know? But I was privileged enough to have ancestors in my life that instilled so much in me.
So guys, I know that you just saw Michelle and you are just overwhelmed by how resilient she is, what a beautiful heart she has, and how she's moving through her purpose. I hope you're as inspired as I was and I am. And until next time, live your best life, and we'll see you for part 2. Thank you.